Yes, hello there and welcome to today's episode of Weekend Rewind. Yes, this is when we put our hands back into the Join Up Dots vaults, swirl it around a bit and find an episode that maybe has got lost in the midst of time. And this is in response to the amount of requests we get from people who say, David, with all the episodes you've released, where should we start? Well, it's very hard to find a place, so we're just going to randomly pick one, and this is today's episode. Enjoy.
When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there everybody. Episode 314 of Join Up Dots. I'm loving today. I have done so many shows and I feel like I'm sprinkled with rocket power. It's energy all the way. And it's not surprising really when I speak to these motivational go-getters and the kind of chap that I'm going to talk to now, because I heard him actually on another podcast and I thought, man, this is a guy I need to get onto my show because he seems to have cracked it big time and knows exactly what he was put on this planet to do, and his mission is to make us the healthiest version of what we can be and live an amazing life every day. But unlike so many of our guests who have a childhood that was less than perfect, his life started in a very different way. As he says in his own words, I spent the first half of my childhood in a quiet suburban neighbourhood with all of the love and attention that a child could ask for. I spent the second half of my childhood growing up in some of the most dangerous parts of the inner city, surrounded by gangs, drugs, alcohol and violence on a daily basis. I was able to gain so much from both environments, and I'm truly grateful for the life I've been given. The situations I was in helped me cultivate perspective, resourcefulness, and most importantly, the power of choice. However, it was in college that my entire world really changed, not because of the education I was receiving, but because of the devastating illness that I was diagnosed with at the age of 20. Seemingly overnight, I was in excruciating pain. I lost a great deal of function in my leg, and I could barely get from room to room in my house, let alone get around on campus anymore. Essentially, my spine was deteriorating far faster than it was supposed to, and according to my doctor at the time, I had the spine of an 80-year-old person, even though I was just a young college kid. And that was just the start of what would become life mission. Starting with getting himself healthy, he learned so much that he could then share with the world. And now being the founder of Advanced Integrative Health Alliance, a successful company that provides wellness services for both individuals and organizations worldwide, podcast host and a dynamic keynote speaker, life seems good. In fact, very good. So does he see people struggling in life as they haven't had the good and the bad, so aren't aware of what they can deal with? And would he like to go back in time and change anything that has occurred whilst on his earth? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mr. Shawn Stevenson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, David. Thank you so much for having me on.
It is great to have you on, and I have to make it clear to all the listeners, I generally write all the introductions, but when I went over to your page, that is basically your introduction. I took it because that is a story, isn't it? That's a very open and honest about page you've got. Why did you feel that you had to lay it all out there?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, when I was doing it, I was really looking at the perspective of being as authentic and as in high integrity as I possibly can, you know, because what it really boils down to and how people connect with each other is being open and being vulnerable. Surprisingly enough, you know, we tend to hide a lot of things, but that hiding from another person prevents you from having rapport, you know. So I just feel that if people know where I'm coming from and know that I know what it's like to be in a lot of the situations that they've been in, then automatically we have a connection, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there and allow for that connection to happen even before somebody hears a single word that I have to say.
Did you think that is how life is going nowadays? Is this kind of the powerful, the perfect that we used to see in maybe the 80s and the 90s? Is it now more powerful for us to say, hey, look, we've got flaws, we've got issues, but actually we've learned how to work through them?
Absolutely. Today, this environment that we live in today is really all about transparency. if you're trying to hide something, if you got skeletons in your closet, there's this thing called the internet that is not going to allow that to stay that way for very long. So the more transparent that you can be, the more of yourself that you share, the more that you're going to be successful in this environment. And what I really feel is that we're getting back to what's more real about humanity in a strange way. We really evolved in situations where everybody did know everybody and everybody knew what was going on in other people's lives, but then we get into this very dissected society to where, you've got your little family plot and then there's somebody else has their family plot, but we're all next door, and it started off as community at first, but then it started to break away. And now we're getting back to this in some strange way online where we're building communities, where we're showing our authentic selves. And I hope that the next wave is going to be another return to having that happening more in person, in communities, and everybody getting connected face to face and not just through our iPhones.
It's strange when you're saying that. Obviously, I'm reflecting on your words because I live in a street. I'm in the United Kingdom and we live in a street, and I have a detached house, so I don't have anyone joined onto me. And my next door neighbour on one side I know very well. The one sort of further on, I kind of know them to say hello, and then I don't know any of them. And across the road, I don't know any of them. And it's quite strange that I have got better connections virtually with people that I've never met than the people I live next door to. It's strange, isn't it?
It's absolutely strange, and it's absolutely amazing at the same time, because there's pros and cons to this for sure. Number one, you're not limited today by your family. You can actually have your blood family, but then you can also choose your family. You can pick and choose who you want to be a part of your inner circle, and this can literally be somebody who's on the other side of the planet. We're now a world community, a world society, and that's powerful. But at the same time, there is nothing deeper and more impactful than an intimate human relationship, and you know this as well. When you're in the environment, when somebody comes to an event that I do, or when I go to an event, that experience, that transformation, it lasts far longer than anything else that you can get exposed to. Even if you see a wonderfully powerful video on YouTube, or, you listen to a powerful podcast, it doesn't hit you as deeply as when you're immersed in the environment, but however, this is the key, is that those mini immersions, listening to podcasts, watching empowering videos, give you the template. They keep giving you that fuel. They keep chipping away and creating that sculpture of your life that you really want. It's just when you get out and you get into environments, it's like really bringing in some bigger tools, and actually other people are bringing their tools along to really help you create something special. So I hope that makes sense.
It makes total sense, yeah. And we're obviously going to go back in time because that's what we do on Join Up Dots. But I suppose I'm going to start with the defining question. But do you feel that you are absolutely authentic to yourself, and are you doing exactly what you were told to do, or the skills and talents you were given on this earth? Has it all come together for you?
Wow. And just being completely honest with myself, I feel that it is. I feel that it has at this exact moment, like just the last few months, everything has just become seamless. I'm living in a continuous state of growth and amazement. And what it was really, it just boiled down to me getting to the place where I made a decision to see it all, and I don't think that any of us ever arrive. I think that we're always continuously growing, and we're hitting plateaus, and then a lot of people just kind of stay there. But then you have the opportunity to keep breaking through, and your greatness doesn't have a limit. So that I feel that I'm definitely integrated into what my mission is and my happiness and my purpose. But I also feel that there's so much more. There's so much more. And it takes me getting to the place where I can even see the next level of vision, because my vision is so big. But I know that when I get there, because right now I'm at a place that I envisioned. So absolutely. But when I get to the next level, I don't even know what beyond that looks like yet. So I'm excited.
Well, you should be excited, and the world should be excited, shouldn't they? What we're talking about here, I suppose, in a nutshell, is about expansion and growth. And you used to hear it in films when you was a kid growing up. That person is all powerful. And I never really kind of understood what that meant. But when you start to find your thing and really it all comes together, you do feel all powerful, don't you? You feel totally in control of your environment, and all your talents, all your skills literally will shoot bolts of lightning out your fingers whatever you touch, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes, I totally agree with that. For me, what I really see is that there are no viable obstacles anymore. Anything that I want to accomplish is right there, and there's nothing that's stopping me. There's nothing holding me back. But the secret, and the thing that I kind of want to go back to again, is that there was actually nothing there stopping me in the first place. Is again just me working on myself and getting myself to the place where I can see clearly. And I can see that where there's a will, there's 1,000 ways. Not one, there's 1,000 or more. It's just the limits that we put on our own minds. So I'm very, very excited and honored and proud to have, really worked on myself and been able to impact the lives of, hundreds of thousands of people at this point. And just to cultivate enough courage and the audacity to see that, I am that powerful. And a lot of people, and I just even want to encourage others, to acknowledge yourself. This is so important, because especially in what I've, in my clinical practice, I've worked with, the vast majority of my patients have been women. And men get this a little bit easier, but it's a little bit more challenging for women to acknowledge themselves, because the female blueprint is to be more altruistic, compassionate, loving, and nurturing.
Perfect,
not to say that men don't have. I'm sorry, not to say that men don't have these capacities. We absolutely do, but women have a greater percentage of that, and it's just kind of naturally built into the DNA. And so when we shift over and we say, "You are beautiful, you are amazing, you are gifted," oftentimes, we'll just kind of, and not just women, but mostly women, will just brush that off. Like, no, it was a team effort. It's our family. That's great. You can acknowledge that, but you also have to acknowledge yourself. You have to give credit where credit is due. You were endowed with these gifts and talents and capacities. They might be latent. They might not be active right now, but you've got all these gifts within you, and they don't get activated until you acknowledge that they're there.
Right, so let's take you back then. You're in your zone here, and we can hear it. But let's take you to a time when you weren't in that zone, and you was the little Shawn. You were running around your neighbourhood. You're having an amazing life. Why was your life as a child very much two parts? How did that occur? Wow.
So when I was born to a mother who was very young. She just turned 18. 2 weeks before I was born, and she wasn't financially capable of taking care of me at the time. So I lived with my grandmother, who was her mother, my grandmother and my grandfather. And I lived with them until I was the age of about 5 or 6. And in that environment, my grandmother loved me. She treated me like I was the greatest person in the world, like I was the most amazing thing on the planet. And just really taught me so much about unconditional love. And I remember, I have memories like I was a very picky eater, which she allowed me to be. But I had my own little table and my own little red chair that I would sit in, and she would make the food that I liked, and I would watch Cartoon Express, and, just doing all these little special things for me. And another thing that I picked up in that environment was the entity of my grandmother and my grandfather. I got to see something that is rare today. It's not, I'm sure they had disagreements, and I'm sure that, they probably argued from time to time, but I never saw that there was so much mutual respect amongst them. They were an entity to me and to everyone. They were Meemaw and Pop. My grandma was Meemaw and then Pop, and they were an entity. And there was so much mutual love and respect that just emanated from them. And I got that blueprint. I got that blueprint about what's possible for relationships, and also what's possible as far as my own unique gifts and talents and just how special I was, because somebody let me know that I was special. And so fast forward, around 6 years old, and I'm going to move back with my mother at this point. And this is in the inner city. And I began going from a predominantly, and I'm my actual race, so I'm half black and half white, to really make it simple. So I went from a predominantly white school where 90% of the students were white, and then now I'm in a predominantly black school where 90% of the students are black. So it's a pretty big culture shock for me. And at the time, like during this time is when I started to realize that I was different, because kids don't grow up knowing that they're different. You know, we're all just kids. We're all love. And so being in that situation was pretty interesting, and a big change and a big shift. And very early on, I was exposed to a lot of violence. And as a matter of fact, I can share this story with you. I actually just shared this story yesterday for the first time in years. But very quickly after moving in with my mother, I started to get into little spats with the boy next door. And we lived in a 4-family flat, and there was another flat next door. And there's this little kid, and his name was Alfonso, and we kept on fighting. So instead of, you know, being conscientious parents and helping us to resolve the issue, they sat us outside, my parents, their parents, and a couple other random adults, and they had us fight. They had these two, and he's bigger than me, he's a couple years older than me. These two little kids who were 6 and maybe 8 years old fight. And what ended up happening was he pushed me into the corner of a brick wall, and it busted my head wide open. And I ended up going and taken in for surgery. And obviously my grandmother was not very happy, and she wanted to get me back, but that didn't happen. But while I was in there, because of what had been programmed into me from living with my parents was, you don't lose. You have to fight. You have to survive. So I'm just like, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. And the next day when I got out of the hospital, I saw him playing in the backyard, digging a hole. And I went over, and he saw me coming, and I picked up a truck, and I hit him with this big metal Tonka truck to try to get back at him. And so I'm living this life where I was given this template of love and compassion, and now I'm in this condition where at the age of 6, that violence is a solution. And so that would kind of plague me for quite a long time, and just seeing, you know, the family environment that I was in now was a lot of violence, a lot of drinking, drugs. But luckily, I had this template of purity and self-awareness. And so I've never drank, I've never smoked, I've never done any drugs. Funny enough, I've never really been interested in it. And partially because I didn't see it at the beginning of my life. And when I started to see it, I didn't like what I saw, you know, but the violence was kind of not optional for me. And also, you know, being more of an attractive kid, I was really pushed into, you know, messing around with a lot of girls at a very young age as well. And so this was like this dual life, but it all came together later on in my teenage years and really helped to create a pretty solid human being, I'd say. So, and that's just a snapshot. I hope that I gave some value there, and maybe I didn't. Maybe I divulged enough of the story. So,
well, what came across to me, Shawn, was number one, you're a storyteller. You know, there was no way that I could butt into that. That was a little movie in the making, that was. And the other thing is, I think your family didn't really teach you to fight, but they taught you to make a decision of what was worth fighting for. And I think that is a gift they gave you. Would you see that
yes. now? Absolutely. And this is one of the things that I would see looking back on that, you know, is to find the gift in it, you know, because even in the negative situations, there's a blessing somewhere. You know, and it's learning how to use these tools and learning how to use things so they don't use me, you know, learning how to use anger consciously instead of letting it use me. Whereas most people in today in our society is very busy minded. We've got a lot of stress. We're in constant reaction. You know, we don't feel like we're in control of our lives, which there's nothing that can be further from the truth. We're just reacting to everything in our environment instead of being in response. You know, responsibility. It's the ability to respond and really cultivating that so that we can use our emotion, we can use our insight to get things done, to accomplish tasks, to create, rather than just being in reaction, having this stuff seemingly going on automatic, which if you can put yourself on autopilot, absolutely. But that's not going to lead you to happiness, until you really catch the lesson in all this stuff.
Did you think, because of your mixed race and the situation that you were put into different schools, that you were quite obviously different in those different schools? Do you think that helped cultivate you being authentic? You had to be yourself because it wasn't, you weren't able to hide somehow because the environment around you was so different.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I tried to fit in. Once I became aware of this, I tried to fit in, and it just didn't work. It backfired in my face because just situations around me would not allow me to feel like I was a part of the situation. And this is back in the 80s, before there's a lot of multi-race children now and people who are becoming adults. It's much, much more common. But at this point, I'm literally going from all white school to all black school to all white school. And I look different, inside, I'm very similar. I just want to be happy. I just want to be loved. I just want to be accepted. But, I got to see also that we tend to be very surface oriented in our culture until we really start to evolve and we get a little bit older, because now, being an adult and even seeing people, because we have Facebook now, so all these individuals from high school and middle school and college, and just how elated that they are to even know me, to say that they knew me or that they went to school with me, it's because their perspective has changed to really see that everybody has value. I was in my little clique mind when I was in high school, but now, I see that, there's not that much difference with us, and what's so great about the world today is that a lot of this stuff is fading away, David, and I think you know this too, of all the separation. And we start to understand, like, even the borders, that we see on a globe, for example, there's a border separating this country from that country. Those lines are just made up. Like, they literally don't even exist. These are man-made borders. They're not even real. And we do the same thing in our minds. We create these borders of what's possible. We create these borders about who we are. And we put ourselves into a box, and we put others into a box. And when you do that, you don't allow for the full expression of your unique capacity as well as the other people around you. So one of my missions is really to help people to break through the borders in their minds. And oftentimes it's just like you can't see the forest for the trees. Because you're in it, you can't see the box that you put around yourself. And just getting in the right environment or having that right message hit you, you can instantly see that I've been controlling myself in an unconscious manner, basically by putting a cast on my spirit, where I can't develop, and actually I'm atrophying, and when you can see the cast, then you can finally chip it off, cut through it and break it off and allow for that spirit to grow again.
Well, let's play some words now that's going to take us to the next part of your journey. And these were words that were said last year by Jim Carrey. Have a listen.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Right words?
Powerful. Truth.
I have many speeches that I listen to, but that one never bores me. And sometimes I listen to it from the father's point of view. Other times I listen to it from Jim Carrey's point of view. But what I hear it all the time is we can hear those words, but unless you're ready to believe them and buy into them, they don't mean anything, do they?
Absolutely not. They're just words.
When did you get that moment that it was right for you to take a risk. It was right for you to create your own path, because your path kind of, in the introduction, it almost grew around you. You had your health issues, and because you had to fight through those, you actually learnt a lot, which you then were willing to share. Did you see that? Do you see that your path basically found you, or did you find your own path?
There's this great quote that I heard. I think it was Michael Beckwith, who said that God doesn't call the qualified, God qualifies the called. And so I feel that, life really qualified me to do the work that I'm doing today, and, the truth is, honestly, most human beings, we only act out of desperation. We only usually take action when we're forced to, when our back's against the wall. When we've got problems that show up in our lives where, we've got to get a certain medical bill paid for, or a family member might not be able to, get a transplant, or we need to come up with money to save our house or whatever, you can find that money then. You find a way. But if you're not put in that position to where life is forcing you to do it, then oftentimes we'll just sit back and sit in the seat of comfort. And this life is not about comfort. It's about challenging yourself. You will have many, many comfortable times, like most of your life is going to be comfortable. But if you don't take action to kind of ease into the discomfort, life is going to put you there. So I was put in a situation where I was faced with a decision, and I just kind of stammered around for 2.5 years after being diagnosed with the so-called incurable condition. And being told by my physician that there was nothing that I could do about this. 2.5 years in belief and disbelief. I was in belief of what the physician said because he knows, right? He went to school for this, and also disbelief that I thought my life would be better than this. I thought that I had a greater story in store for me. And so a moment of decision happened. And this is what it really boils down to. 2.5 years later, I'm sitting on my bed. I'm about to take medication. It's in my hand. And I have to take these pills just in order to sleep at night, because the pain is so bad that if I change positions while sleeping, it will wake me up. The pain will wake me up. And so I'm looking at these pills, and then I have never told this complete story before. And so you have the context now. I think about my grandmother, and I haven't really thought about her in these 2.5 years. She's still alive. But when she calls me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine, Grandma. Just, leave me alone. But in this moment, I think about her. And I think about all of the amazing things that she would say about me to other people. All the amazing things that she would say to me and that she would see in me. And she told me that I would do all these special things and how special I was. And I thought about her, and I thought that my life was not matching up to my potential. And that I still have this potential in me. I can see it. But I didn't decide to do anything about it. I had unknowingly put my life off into the hands of well-meaning a physician, who's telling me that there was nothing that I can do about this. But here's the truth, is that he doesn't have the final say about me. And also, he's just a man. He's just a person. But I had this God complex that he said that this was how it was, and this is the way that it had to be. And not really understanding that what he had done was something called a nocebo effect. So a placebo effect is when you give somebody more of a seemingly positive injunction, and so that they believe. And for example, in clinical studies across the board, you're going to see an average of about 33% effectiveness for a placebo. All right, 33% effectiveness for something that's not a drug. It's just something that somebody believes is a drug. To the degree, there's fascinating studies of individuals taking placebo, fake chemotherapy, and then they proceed to have their hair fall out and experience all the nausea symptoms that an individual undergoing chemotherapy would have, but they're not actually taking chemotherapy. If people are interested in that, they can look into the work of Dr. Lisa Rankin, for example. But anyway, so the nocebo effect is giving someone a negative injunction, and so that they are put into the tendency to believe that something bad is going to happen. For example, when you tell somebody that they have 3 months to live, when they walked into the doctor's office and just maybe they're experiencing some pain, And then they find out they have terminal cancer. And then they proceed to start deteriorating right before your eyes. And now they're in a wheelchair within a week. And you can ask what happened. Well, he was told that he has 3 months to live. And he believed it. And some people just don't choose to believe that. And so this nocebo effect had taken hold in my life, and I recognized it. And so I made a decision in that moment that I'm going to find out everything that I can about the human body, and I'm going to focus on wellness. I'm going to focus on health, because when I initially went to school, pre-med, and had this kind of fascination or idea that I was going to be a doctor, but then quickly saw in college that I didn't like science very much, which is my life now. I absolutely love it. But it's the way that I was taught. I saw very quickly that the upperclassmen, they were just like engulfed in disease. Like they just thought about it all the time. They were so focused on self-diagnosing themselves, especially when we get into psychiatry and psychology. You see a little thing wrong and you diagnose yourself with this, or you diagnose your friend with that. And it bothered me. And also understanding that it was really based on pharmacology, and if this is going wrong with the patient, prescribe this medication. If this is going on, possibly do this surgery. So it's really a cut, burn, and poison kind of methodology for treating. Now, here's the bottom line. The word doctor means teacher. It means teacher. And we've been disconnected from that, because your doctor should be a teacher, a partner, a coach, somebody there who's working with you. As a matter of fact, you're the main coach. They're the assistant coach. But you have to be empowered enough to say that this is my body, this is my mind, and I'm the one that's endowed with the responsibility of taking care of it. They are there to support me, not to choose for me. So in that moment, sitting there on my bed, holding that bottle of pills in my hands, I made the decision that I was going to get well. And when you make a real decision about something, so the word decision is from the Latin de, meaning from, and caedere, which means to cut. When you make a real decision, you cut away the possibility of anything else except that thing that you decide on. So when I decided to get well, there was no other option. So I slept through the night for the first time for 8 hours in those 2.5 years. And I woke up and I put a plan together. And this plan included 3 powerful modalities that I teach people all the time today, but just do with different language to spice it up. But basically, it's not you are what you eat, it's you are what you assimilate. So what is my spine that was deteriorating? What is my back made of? What is my spine actually made of? What are those nutrients? And guess what? I was deficient in all of them. When I started to give my body the raw materials it needed to heal itself, it did just that. And so when I went back to see the doctor many months later, and they took the scan and they saw that my tissue had regenerated, all he could say was, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So that's number 1, right nutrition. Number 2 is movement. I was told by multiple physicians, don't do anything, wear this back brace, be careful. I was still a capable young man that, again, I literally and figuratively had this cast on, and I wasn't able to use my body. And here's the truth. Your body requires movement in order to heal itself. Your body requires movement in order to heal itself. It's on the premise of if you don't use it, you lose it. You start to atrophy. So I started to move again. And the third thing was, your body really changes, for better or for worse, mostly for the better, while you're asleep. Your body changes and heals while you're asleep. And so I naturally, when I started to pay more attention to my nutrition and to my exercise, I naturally started to have a really great sleeping pattern. And I was waking up feeling amazing, and that really, it changed my body so much. 6 weeks after making that decision, I lost 30 pounds, which I'd gained about 40, 50 pounds of not the sexy kind of weight, being laid out on my floor and playing video games while in college all the time and eating fast food every day. I lost 30 pounds, and people on campus, they saw me. It wasn't like, I didn't look like a guy who lost weight. I looked like a guy with radiant health. I look like a guy with radiating, vibrant health. But
that's not surprising. I'm going to jump in there, because what you did was simply you reclaimed your own personal power, didn't you? You took the control away from the doctor and you reclaimed it. And the reason I phrase it like that, we had a guest on the show back in the 292s or something called Chris Gibson, who he's a very well known in America. He had terrible bad skin, and he took all these creams and everything that people were saying to him, you know, and pay $500 for this course. And when he decided that the prescription that he had was rubbish and he threw it in the bin, his life changed. And he says he reclaimed his power. And so you was always going to get better, weren't you? Because mentally, you'd chosen to get better.
Absolutely. And the only discernment or distinction between myself and other individuals in the same situation or a similar situation is that I did reclaim my health, is that I chose. I realized that I had a choice, you know, and again, I was put in a situation, my back was against the wall. I don't feel I could have gotten any lower besides not being here, you know, and of course, having that state of depression when you're not an active human being and you're not living your potential or living life to any great degree, you know. So for me, making that decision was the critical component. And when people started to see me now, you know, just walking around on campus, my professors came up to me, students came up to me, and they started asking me for help. And so this was the birthing of my career. You know, I shifted my study back over to biology and learning about health and nutrition in the university setting, which I got a little caveat for everybody. I only learned about maybe 1% of what I know today from that university setting. I was actually taught a lot of bad science, but that experience was so powerful because, you know, if I hadn't gone through that, if life didn't qualify me, I wouldn't be on my mission today. I wouldn't be doing the thing that I was really born to do, which was to be of high service, which was to inspire people, which was to ensure that people feel good, which was to ensure that people have sovereignty, that they have true empowered health. You know, that's what my mission is. And I wouldn't have been able to recognize that had I not gone through my own personal struggle.
But the difference between you and so many other people is that you recognized, but you took action and you studied and you gained more knowledge than other people around you, and then you could provide the value to them. Now, I've got a chap coming on the show tomorrow morning, and he believes that our entire life is just us building a library of knowledge, that if we then parcel it up, we can then sell it to other people. And he believes we've all got a knowledge base that we can actually create an income. People, there's going to be somebody out there that wants the knowledge that Shawn has built up or David's built up or whoever. But unless you're actually aware of that and aware of that value, then all you're going to be doing is walking around campus and having conversations with people. And you quite obviously haven't. You've taken it to a very successful business. So when did you decide that actually the freebie, the helping people just because you knew more than them, couldn't continue and it was going to be into a business?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I remember the first person who I helped, and it was a young lady, and she just asked me to help her to do what I had done. And I didn't have any context for being able to charge any money to do this, you know, so I just helped her. And then she's like, you know, I should pay you something. And I was like, okay, $7, you know, like just like scraps, right? Like pennies, you know? And today, I mean, it's light years beyond that, but I was just starting to understand, like, okay, so I'm giving this service and somebody actually wants to give me money back. For me personally, I didn't consciously choose right out of the gate. Someone told me they want to pay me, you know? And so that kind of started my thinking of, you know, what is this whole thing? What is this whole system? And a lot of people have issues with dealing with money. And I definitely did, you know, especially coming from a situation where we grew up in poverty, you know, the second part of my childhood, you know? So what it really was for me was getting to the place of understanding my value, you know? So fast forward just a couple of years, and now I'm getting into actually working with patients in a clinical setting and helping them to reverse type 2 diabetes, for example. Now, an individual who they're about to go on dialysis if they don't get this together. They're about to be put on insulin. Their body is failing them. They could possibly die within the next couple of years. And we come in and we put together a protocol, and now they've completely reversed their insulin resistance. They've lost 50 pounds. They're no longer dependent on metformin or whatever the particular drug may be. they are actually cured. They no longer have, clinically, the word quote cured, they no longer have the disease that they once had. How much is that worth? How valuable is that? We cannot put a value on human life. Like if we talk about, David, so how much is your left leg worth?
As much as me right leg.
That's a politically correct answer, but the reality is, like, this is priceless. This is priceless. So what I like to do is to put people into a state where, of course, they understand the value, but more so to make them feel like they're investing something, they're putting some skin in the game. It gets to them just a little bit, so they take it seriously, because that's what I saw early on as well, is that when you're giving everything away without somebody investing anything into it themselves, because of the way that our society is structured and the way that we're mentally set up, we honestly don't put 120% into it, as compared to when you invest something. When you put some money into something, you want to see it bear some fruit, and people are just naturally more inclined to take action. And by the way, that's not everybody, that's not all circumstances, but generally this is the case. And I've worked with thousands and thousands of people, so it's just getting to the place where you can understand your value, and then putting your prices in a place that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, so that it'll make them just a little bit uncomfortable, and that's what it's about. And then you work together to come to that particular goal, that solution that you both are looking for.
So what was the biggest mental block you had? Because what we're talking about here is the starting of a business. And our listeners out there, they come to me with so many ideas, but I see it that they don't quite believe that they can take this to fruition. They can take this to a business. And it doesn't need a lot. It only needs a tweaking or a different point of view, whatever. And it's quite obvious there's value in it. So was the biggest mental block getting yourself fit, or actually then taking it further, taking it to the point of actually charging for your services?
Wow. The getting fit part was actually incredibly easy, because when I made that decision and I put my heart into it, it just all unfolded right in front of me. However, the other portion, making it into a career, my story and my gifts, was definitely a lot more challenging, because I had to build myself up in order to be somebody who had the capacity, the talents, the skills to be able to help another person who, most of the time, it's not a matter of can they do it. It's a matter of getting them to the right state psychologically and emotionally to where they can do it. Because honestly, the strategies for getting fit and healthy are simple. I mean, it's absurdly simple. Eat good food, move your body, have a stress management practice, make sure that you have supportive people around you, and get good sleep. Like, these things they're pretty simple, but why don't we do them? Why don't we do them? That's the real question. And that's where the gold lies. That's where the talented practitioner actually earns his income, or he earns his reward, by figuring out, how do I help that person to find that place within themselves to where they do these things that are so simple so they can have what they really want, because what it really is, there's those barriers that we have in our mind. And oftentimes, and I like to share this as many times as I can, is that the number one driving force of a human being is to stay congruent with the ideas that they hold of themselves. Okay, so I'll say that again. The number one driving force of a human being is to stay congruent with the ideas that you carry for yourself. So if I see myself as a person who is chubby, and I don't like my job, and I drive a car that's always having problems, so be it. So be it. Life is going to respond to you in like kind. That this is your belief. And what happens if you start to go outside of that paradigm, you start to exercise a little bit, you start to do a little dieting, you're going to self-sabotage, because that's not who you see yourself as being. You've got to stay congruent. You've got to be that guy. And also, the people around us, as they see you as that person as well, they're going to help you. They're going to help to remind you that, hey, what are you doing exercising? Chubby Chuck? You don't do that. You're Chubby Chuck. You're our guy. We poke fun at you. You poke fun at us. So when you start to stretch outside of that, not only do you have to change your own mindset, but you have to understand that the people around you are going to change as well. And you've got to be prepared for that. So there's a lot of components that people have to work on, but we can make this as seamless and graceful as possible just by I think one of the greatest things, I really, and I haven't talked about this before, but I'm very passionate about helping people to get to the place where they don't have to change, and I know this sounds crazy, but helping people to make these decisions, to take care of themselves before something bad happens, before they hit rock bottom, before their back is against the wall. Let's not even get to that point. You don't have to do what I did. Get this now.
Is it not the easier way, though, Shawn, to hit rock bottom? Because it takes you out of that dream killer, which is the comfort, that middle ground that 90% of the world is in. And it seems to me, after 300 conversations, the people that hit the bottom look down and think, well, there's no further I can drop. It's up time. Yeah. But the ones in the middle, they're the ones that are lost somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Rock bottom is a valuable place to be, but I know today that, and there's different rock bottoms, there's different versions of that in different areas of our lives. And I got to a place where I can see where, okay, I'm being in the middle ground here on these different things. And I don't have to have it get any worse. If I decide, you know what, I'm just going to get up and pull myself up. Well, actually, no, you start by pushing yourself. You push yourself to do it until the vision starts to pull you out, And so I want to help as many people as I can so that they don't have to go through the rock bottom part. Though it's valuable, let's see if we can stand on the shoulders of giants or build on top of buildings, just keep on getting better and better and better and bigger and bigger, And I think that the greatest quantum leap opportunity is the trial and success method, instead of trial and failure. And I'm really, really passionate about this because it takes a very great amount of skill when somebody's not in pain. Their life isn't that bad. They make just enough money. Their health isn't to the degree where they've been diagnosed with something. It's just not that bad. How can I compel these people to be great? Because the truth is, bad is going to come. And I don't like these labels, but I'm just for the point of communication. Something negative is going to happen if you're living the way that you're living, and you've got you can't eat just one, you're like your hands in the bag and, you're just like a desk jockey, or an armchair quarterback and just constantly watching television and you're not growing yourself. That's not who you are. That's not what you were designed to do. So you're going to have pain unless you can get this now.
But is there, and we're going to play the words of Steve Jobs in a moment, which is the theme of the whole show. It's why we call it Join Up Dots. But one of the things that comes out time and time again is the bad things are the good things and the good things are the bad things. So in your situation, you look at your history, your health history, and you go, well, that must have been terrible. But naturally, no, that was good. And you wouldn't be where you are without it. So do people not actually have to go through the dark times? Is that not what makes the good times flourish?
Here's what I think. This is a really great example. Let's just say the potential of a human being. We got like a scale of 1 to 10 on how great you can be as a human being, all of us. So level 10 is like the Dalai Lama, enlightened being, kind of, Buddha, Jesus, like that kind of level.
Yeah.
And level 1 is just like straight up survival on the streets, just trying to get something to eat, right? So this is the scale of human potential. Now let's say that you're a level 4 person, okay? You're a level 4 person. And by the way, the scale of human potential, the scale of problems are the same, 1 to 10, okay? So you're a level 4 person, right? Just going on about your life. Now a level 3 problem happens. Ooh, this is probably gonna mess up your day, probably mess up your week, probably cause a lot of turmoil and distress in your life. All right, because the problem is almost bigger than you are. Now, let's say you work on yourself proactively, not because of something negative happening, but you build yourself up, because you understand that you have this opportunity. You understand that you are here to be great. You understand that there is so much that you can achieve and you are around other people who are cultivating that in you. You grow yourself to be a level 8 person and then a level 3 problem happens. it literally doesn't even come on your radar. You know, this is something you can handle on your lunch break, or maybe you can even have someone else hire somebody else to take care of it, because you've grown yourself, you know, proactively. So absolutely, one method of change is going through the dark times. But what I really feel is that even when you get up to level 8, there are a different type. It's a higher quality problem that happens. You know, you also have the dark times. You also have the struggles and the challenges, but now you see them differently, you know, and you also get the message faster. So as you grow yourself, you don't have to hit rock bottom if you choose growth, you know, and you can have these little kind of mini dark nights of the soul instead of like straight up in the dark corner depression, you know. And this is my belief, and this is what I've seen in my clinical practice.
So where would you score yourself on the level 1 to 10?
Oh, wow. Wow. I would not be honoring myself if I didn't say I was a level 10 person.
Quite simple as that. You're as good as you can be at the moment.
But level 10, even when I give that example, there's always more. There's always more. There's always more.
And is 10 your personal belief, or is 10 what you know you can achieve? Because that's where I have a problem with that. I was trying to judge myself. I was thinking, my personal belief of where I'm going and what I'm going to attain, yes, that's going to be a 10. But actually where I am at now, is it the kind of the actions, is it the task, is it the value I'm putting into the world that gives me my true score, or is it my personal belief of what I'm going to become?
Here's the problem, David, is that when you get to level 10, then what?
The only way's down.
You know, then exactly, there's nothing else seemingly. But I really, even when I said that, it takes a bit of confidence in oneself to say something like that. But for me, I think that everybody has that level 10. They already are that. They're level 10 for themselves where they are right now, you know, but there's so much more, you know, like you're exactly who you are and who you've chosen to be, you know. So I colored it differently in my mind when I answered the question, you know, because to rate ourselves as human beings is impossible, you know. And so for me, I'm as great as I can be right now in this moment because I've chosen to be so. But at the same time, I know that there's probably a scale of 100, and when I get to 100, there's probably a scale of 1,000, and on and on and on, you know. So I feel that every single human being has this level 10 potential within them, and they're already accessing it, but they're probably not accessing it consistently. How about I put it like that?
Well, I think that's spot on. But I will also say, but don't you think that we all rate ourselves against other people? That's the key.
Absolutely.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. There's a great quote that says, when you compare me, you negate me. You know, when you compare me, you negate me. Or also, when you label me, you negate me is another one. But when you compare me, or you compare yourself, and I first heard this from my mother-in-law, when you compare yourself, you silence God. And what that really speaks to is the fact that you are a unique phenomenon. You are a unique entity that has been gifted with certain capacities that no other human being in the history of the world has been or ever will have. You know, there's billions of people on this planet right now, but no two people see things the same. It's impossible. If you've got 50,000 people in a stadium, there's 50,000 different points of view and 50,000 different ways that they're coloring that game, you know? And so all of us really have these unique gifts, but when we start to compare ourselves, we start chipping away at our gifts and our own uniqueness and our own value. You know, it's just, and then by the way, the comparison is, again, it's just a program. It's a program that we've accepted, you know, and there are cultures that are far different from our culture as far as what they see as beauty, as far as what they see as talent. You know, there are cultures where, you know, the bigger the female body is, the better, the more healthy, the more robust, because they can bear a lot of children, you know. Or there's societies where, you know, where actually there's society structures where the woman is the dominant force. You know, the woman is the person who's actually managing the tribal community. You know, and I actually talked about this on one of the episodes of my show. Well, my guest did, more so. Daniel Vitalis was on the show talking about these different kind of societal structures. And we just are doing one. But if you're in it, you don't know that there's another option. You don't know that there's another possibility. You know, so there's a lot going on there with comparison. But more so, I think it's really just a matter of you getting back and being grateful for yourself, finding a practice daily to give thanks. And here's why we don't do this, David, is because religiosity, you know, scripturally, you know, being in fear of vanity, right? And it's still there in me. It made me a little uncomfortable to say that I'm a level 10 person. It's like, who are you to say that?
Well, I was surprised, to be honest.
And other people around you, you know, but there's a difference between a healthy confidence and being assured of yourself and being grateful for who you are and the person that you are. There's a difference between that and Kanye West, you know? And I'm sure even him, he has a story that other people are probably not hearing, you know, but it's a fear of vanity. It's a fear of like, if somebody has to tell you that they're humble, they're probably not humble. I would rather have other people say that about me than for me to say it myself. I'm not going to be that. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to tell you that I can help you. I'm going to tell you that I'm the best teacher and presenter of health information on the planet. I'll tell you that because I have to see it first before anybody else does.
I can see why you sleep so well. There's a calmness, there's an assuredness of you. You're not battling, and I think that's why so many people do sleep badly. For example, I think they're battling perceptions, battling what they need to do. You seem to be pretty contained, and you know what you're going to do, and you're going to do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, let's play the words of Steve Jobs. We're getting near the end of the show, but I really need to find out what your big dot in your timeline is. So this is the whole theme, and these are the words that he said back in 2005.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Do you dots line up? Do you buy into those words, Shawn?
Wow, absolutely. Man, I've got tears, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the $1 million question I ask it to everyone is, what was your big dot? What was the moment when you look back and you go, yeah, it might have been just a subtle little thing, but that was when Shawn really started to become who he should be?
The thing that came up while I was listening to him was when I met my wife. And she was, of course, at one point my girlfriend. And I met her while I was still in school. And of course, I had this powerful moment of decision and transformation take place. But where I am today was a direct result. And I needed her. I needed what she offered, what she brought to the table in order to help to create me, in order to help to flesh out the person that I really am and all the parts that were closed in me, all the doors that have been closed. Looking back to when I had that template as a child and seeing my grandparents as this powerful entity, I had that. I actually got to experience that. And it was always there, possible, but it wasn't until that moment. And here's why it really hit me is that with my wife, with my girlfriend at the time, I got to meet her mother. I got to meet her mother, my mother-in-law, and I was dedicated to helping other people. I was dedicated to being of service. And now I had met the woman who was the single most altruistic, giving, loving, gifted, intelligent person I had ever met. And she was deeply engulfed in just in all things health. It's just like, how could I possibly meet this woman? When I met my girlfriend, she really wasn't that much into this stuff. You know, as a matter of fact, even me, when I went to her mom's house for the first time, and I'm fresh, still in college, you know, this is about a year and a half after this physical transformation, and I hadn't put all the pieces together. And so I didn't know anything about wheatgrass, and I walk into their house and there's like, her mom's growing grass. I'm like, what's up? You know, what's your mom? Is she smoking this? I don't know. Like, what is this grass here? You know, and just all these raw foods and dehydration trays and all this stuff. And she had actually went down to Ann Wigmore's Institute and really cultivated herself and become a practitioner working with like raw foods and detoxification and these things. And 30 years ago, she went to Maharishi's school in Kenya to learn meditation, and which was really counterculture to the environment that she was in, and suffered through all of the people, you know, saying that this was not appropriate, you know, that she's drinking the Kool-Aid and these things. And she still remained true to herself and worked and got her family here to the United States as well, and has helped so many other Kenyans to be able to do the same. And now they absolutely love her. But at one point they you know, said that she wasn't a good person, you know. So anyway, she'd been through all these things, and to have her come into my life really changed everything for me, because it opened my eyes. I realized by talking to her that I didn't know anything. You know, I had only scratched the surface on what was possible, you know, because it's all about your reference point. You know, at that point, I had just really thought I'd figured it out, because I look at me, I'm physically healthy and attractive outwardly, outside, and there's no pain. But what about the allergies? You know, what about the asthma? What about the colds and flus? Do these things have to happen? No, absolutely not. This is when we get into the details. So because of her, I found access to the details. And that's really what I feel has been one of my greatest gifts in helping thousands of people, is my ability to access the big picture and also the details. So that was my dot, was meeting my amazing wife and my mother-in-law.
We could take this show in all different directions. We could have about a 6-hour episode here, but unfortunately, this is the end of the show, and this is the part that we call the Sermon on the Mic, when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the younger Shawn, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the theme tune, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Okay, so I am back 16 years old, and a lot is about to change in my life. I'm going to see the first warning signs of physical degeneration and breakdown, and start to question my ability. You know, I am looking outwardly talented, you know, on the football field, on the track, but physically I'm breaking down inside, and I can't seem to stay healthy. And I would tell myself to trust the process. Trust the process. All of the things that you're about to go through is going to lead you to something magnificent, you know, beyond anything that you can possibly fathom right now. You're going to do great, amazing things that's going to impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the short term and millions of people in the long term. But you've got to trust the process. Go through these things, go through the tough times. But the only thing I'm going to advise you to do is catch the lesson faster. When the challenge comes up, see the gift in it a little bit faster so that you can move to the next level, because you've got a lot of work to do, man.
Shawn, how can our audience connect with you, sir?
They can connect with me multiple ways. You can definitely hit me up on my show on iTunes. It's called The Model Health Show. And I'm honored. I'm completely blown away to be able to say this, but we've been featured as the #1 health show on the iTunes charts many times, #1 in fitness and nutrition. And for my show, what we do is we really do master classes. So I take people behind the scenes and showing what I've been teaching here in my clinic, helping individuals. We've got about a 90% reversal rate for type 2 diabetes. Amazing stories with reversing breast cancer and other types of cancers, heart disease, helping people to get off the lisinopril, statin, metformins, whatever the case may be, if they don't want to be dependent on medications for the rest of their lives, by helping to get rid of the underlying cause of the disease. So we've got classes ranging from those on depression to diabetes, as I mentioned, to just general fat loss and just looking good, feeling good about yourself, but also the inner game stuff. So breaking through obstacles in your life, helping to shift your body image and the way that you see yourself, the way that you talk to yourself. So definitely check out the Model Health Show. You can listen on iTunes or any modality that you listen to your podcasts on, Stitcher, all that good stuff. Or you can connect with me online at my home online and listen to the show there. We've also got some awesome videos. So my home online is theshawnstevensonmodel.com. And you can just Google me. It's Shawn, S-H-A-W-N, Stevenson, S-T-E-V-E-N-S-O-N. And I'll be right there to pop up. And I'll be so honored and happy to connect with you and to add some value to your life. And I really thank you for listening. And David, I appreciate you having me on so much. This has been amazing. Thank you.
We will have all the links on the show notes. And yeah, it has been amazing. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. Please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past is the best way to build our futures. Mr. Shawn Stevenson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.